So this is going to be the summative assessment for my choice novel book, which I chose The Great Gatsby to read and annotate, and I picked out some themes like we were supposed to, and I analyzed that and took notes and tracked that throughout the book through annotations, notes, and just overall thinking about what my prior knowledge in certain things. So I'm gonna get started. And so, first theme, the author Fitzgerald emphasizes that the life people inherit has a significant impact on their ethics, their morality, their morals, etc., etc. And I think there's a few good examples of this throughout the book, and a few different characters that really show that what people are born into, or how they, their experiences and all that really shape how they view their ethics and their interpretation of what is right and wrong. So, start this. First example is Tom, and it's on page 12 when Nick is the narrator. He's at Tom's house or his mansion, I guess, because it's really big. Because they're at Tom's house and they're having dinner with Tom, Nick, Daisy, and I think it was Jordan Baker was the other character that was there. But they're having dinner, just talking, discussing, and then Tom all of a sudden brings up, quote, end of page 12 and beginning of page 13. "Civilization's going to pieces," broke out Tom violently. "I've gotten to be a terrible pessimist about things. Have you read The Rise of the Colored Empires by this man Goddard?" "Why, no," I answered, rather surprised by his tone. "Well, it's a fine book, and everybody ought to read it. The idea is, if we don't look out, the white race will be utterly submerged. It's scientific stuff. It's been proved." And so this here shows that Tom's view, obviously back in this time, the early 1900s, racism and lack of diversity in certain areas of life is still a problem today, obviously, but even way back then in the early 1900s, it was an even much bigger problem. And even now, but even back then, the rich upper class was all white, really. There was no rich millionaire, people of different cultures, African Americans, Native Americans, etc., etc. There was not really any diversity in that group of the world or in the country. And this shows here that Tom, he's worried, and obviously the person who wrote this book is worried that, if they don't do anything to stop it, these other cultures and races and people are going to take over their life and are going to be the rich, upper class, wealthy. And they obviously don't want that, because they're very happy with their way of life. Well, they say they are, but which I'll get into later. But they have their money, they have their house, they have their clothes, their cars, their everything. They got it all, and they just don't want anybody else to take it, and they're scared that African Americans or anybody else is gonna take out and wipe out the whites from that top, which is obviously not true at all. But I think it goes to show that just the environment Tom's been in his life, and he is now, I think, is more bred to that, because at this time, that was more of an idea, is that white people back then were the tip top of, and especially in this book, they're the upper class, and they didn't like the idea of people coming in and taking that or limiting their hold on it. So it just shows that Tom, his beliefs are that, even though those are obviously wrong, but he's in that, and that just shows how that's impacted his ethics and how he views other people. And if we go to another example, I think just on page 2, this is another good quote, I think, from Nick on the top of page 2 that really helps support this, and it's, "Reserving judgment is a matter of infinite hope. I am still a little afraid of missing something if I forget that, as my father snobbishly suggested, and I snobbishly repeat, a sense of the fundamental decencies is parceled out unequally at birth." Now, this is a quote from Nick on top of page 2, and it basically says that people, from when they're born, when they grow up, they have a different amount of sense of what's good and what's wrong, like I kind of said in my theme statement, or my claim. And they're kind of just born with that, or that's put into them based on their surroundings and all this. And I agree with that. I think, in general, just your surroundings and what you're around has a big impact on in your environment. It's a big impact on who you are. And I think in this book it definitely does. Like I explained with Tom and with Gatsby, who he claims that he was born up in a family. That's where he got a lot of his wealth from, and that's why he went to Oxford, because it's a family tradition. But like I said, I think that has a big impact on people and I think people also just they have a sense of what should be good. Some of these people, they got their money, but how they get it is not necessarily always good. I know Gatsby, I can't remember the exact page number, but he's talking with Nick right as Daisy is they're about to with Daisy are about to go over to Gatsby's house, and Nick kind of inquires, well, what do you do? How'd you get your money? He says, well, that's my affair. Immediately tries to shut it down, and then eventually he kind of tells him, but you just get the sense that there's not necessarily 100% honesty there. And I just, like I said, I think that's a good quote that kind of helps set that up. And now next, this kind of leads right into it, actually. But my next thing I'm going to talk about is like the destructiveness or wealth or the mystery or non-transparency of the upper class. Now, I've seen this because, like I just said, the example with Gatsby a few minutes ago, not wanting to reveal what exactly he does or how he gained his wealth, I think is just an example that a lot of these you don't really know a lot about these people. I mean, Nick kind of has he seems more of an observer. He observes these upper class people around, like Tom Gatsby's around, but they never really openly will seem to reveal to someone that what they do. And I mean, especially based on some of the hints I've gotten about their ethics, their morals, that you just think that it has the kind of a bad impact or influence on other people and their image of them. Because like at the first party at Gatsby's house in the book, the group of people and they're talking about how they don't know who Gatsby is. Someone thinks he's a German spy in the war. Someone thinks he was an American soldier in the war. Someone says he killed a man, which they thought was in the war or not. So I think there's just a cloud of mystery around him that nobody really knows, and I think that could go a lot for some of the upper class wealthy in this book. And they're just, like I just said, they're not transparent. They're not going to openly tell someone about them, and I think that's good. And also another kind of interesting quote is from Meyer Wolfsheim when Nick went to lunch with Gatsby. It's on page 72, and they were talking to him, and Nick didn't really. He sounds like he didn't get a good vibe from him and he says he says, quote, Nick, at page 72 and page 73, as he shook hands and turned away, his tragic nose was trembling. I wondered if I had said anything to offend him. And then Gatsby says he becomes very sentimental sometimes. He's quite a character around New York, a denizen of Broadway. And then they go into how he is, and Gatsby goes, no, he's a gambler. He's the man who fixed the World Series back in 1919. And then, they go on to discuss it, and then Nick goes, why isn't he in jail? And then Gatsby responds, well, they just can't get him, old sport. He's a smart man. And again, I think that just shows that they're very good at hiding themselves and officially what they are, because they don't really want people to know. They don't want to take that chance. They don't want anybody to try to take advantage of them or gain their wealth or potentially take their opportunities away. And so I think that's another good little example to help support that. And last, another thing I thought was, this is a bit of a cliche, but like having an excess in money and material things does not guarantee happiness. Like I said, that sounds like a cliche, but it honestly rings very true in The Great Gatsby in the book. Because if we go to page 95, and this is a quote that I found interesting. It's when Gatsby was over with Nick and Daisy at his house. They were having tea supposedly, and then they were about to go over to Gatsby's house because he wanted to show Daisy it because he was in love with her, and this is why this whole thing was set up, because he wanted to see her. But they were coming over, and and the quote is, as I went over to say goodbye, I saw that expression of bewilderment had come back into Gatsby's face, as though a faint doubt had occurred to him as to the quality of his present happiness. Almost 5 years. Now that is from Nick on page 95. And he's talking about how Gatsby hadn't seen Daisy in 5 years. So, and it has been mentioned several times before in the book that, he was fixated on her, he was in love with her, and it just shows that money and material things do not guarantee happiness. Like Gatsby, you think, oh man, he's got a huge house, he's got a mansion, he's got all the cars, clothes, everything that you could ever want, but there's still an emptiness or a loneliness to him. He doesn't really have anybody he loves. He doesn't really have any family, and so I think like it says that expression of bewilderment on his face, I think means kind of he's unsure, or he doesn't really know what to think now that he's finally got what he wanted, that Daisy's there and that they're together kind of, and he's just not sure if this is really what he wants, or he doesn't know what it feels like, so he's not positive. He doesn't know if he wants to leave the comforts of his old life, even though he does still want that. He wants that meaning, that significant relationships with other people, which he really doesn't, because like he mentions in the quote, he fills his place with just significant people, interesting people at his parties, so he wants that more connection with other people, but he just doesn't know how, or doesn't understand the feeling, and that just shows that he's not 100% happy. He's a little bit lonely, And so a few other quotes maybe support that would kind of help round this out. It's on page 149, and let me see if I can find it here quickly. It's on page 149. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. The thing is, the quote is, he knew that Daisy was extraordinary, but he didn't realize just how extraordinary a nice girl could be. She vanished into a rich house, into a rich, full life, leaving Gatsby nothing. He felt married to her. That was all. So, again, I think it just kind of shows that he still wasn't sure to feel, and he didn't realize how significant this was, because he's never known it, even though he thinks he wants it. He just doesn't know. He's still got that emptiness and that loneliness into him. And then finally, I'm going to just get one more quote in here before we wrap this up. But the next quote that I want to get to is on page 165. It's Gatsby says to Nick, he says, "Look here, old sport. You've got to get somebody for me. You've got to try hard. I can't go through this alone." And this could be a little out of context, but I think I got it mainly. And that he wants people, like, he wants more significant friends, significant relationships, and he obviously is in love with Daisy. So, he doesn't like the loneliness, but he's not 100% happy, but he doesn't know how to get out of his ways. He's just so used to that. He's unsure and he's uneasy about that, and it seems a bit anxious kind of about it, because like I said, he's not positive if that's really gonna make him happy, even though it's what he wants. And so, yeah, that's gonna be my novel summative. Thanks for watching.